Well, those who are, nearly everybody in the audience knows these facts well, but it doesn't stop an Englishman repeating them, not just for the sake of the guests, but also to put them perhaps in a slightly different perspective. Lustration, as the word is, was in an idea that by one means or another, one would either break the link between the communist regime and the post-communist democratic regime, or at least expose those who had been involved, particularly those involved in nefarious practices under the old regime, so that anybody who decided to vote for them or promote them would know what they were doing. In practice, it was also intended, and perhaps most importantly intended, and this relates to what John was saying about denazification, to change the atmosphere. In society, collective guilt is a very important thing, and the sense of collective guilt is always being manipulated by the media or being manipulated by outsiders in one way or another. I just give a little example. In the Croatian War of Independence, what they call the Homeland War, appalling atrocities were committed by the Serbs, beyond description. Nothing had been seen both in Croatia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Atrocities that nobody had seen since the Second World War. Now, far from actually apologizing for that, what Serbia did and has done with great effectiveness is to refocus attention on real atrocities committed by the Ustaša, the Croatian fascist movement, essentially under the wing of the Nazis during the Second World War. So that, in fact, we forget the more recent atrocities, which are still, there are people walking around with only one leg or in some terrible mental state because of the atrocities, these latest atrocities. We're meant to focus on things in the past. And this kind of manipulation of guilt is very important. But of course, on the other side, and this is part of what politics is about, we have to make the enemies, I don't mean our personal enemies, but the enemies of what we believe in, we want them to feel guilty. Or even if they don't actually feel guilty, this is important, there is a distinction, we have to make them feel ashamed. Because shame is a public thing. Shame is, I don't want Mate really to know this or that about me. Guilt is actually, I don't want myself to know that about me. But anyway, at least go for shame. But in fact, because there has been no lustration, no exposure of who was what under the communist regime, the cruel communist regime of Tito, here or in any other former bits of Yugoslavia, people are able to carry on, the elite of this country is able to carry on as if nothing happened. And as a result, almost all of those who are running the country in one way or another, I'm not just talking about politics, but the politics, business, and judicial, these are people who are basically part of the old communist stock. These are communist mentality people who've got their education in many cases by stipendiae, which were available to those who were the offspring of communists, of partisans, and were not to those who were not. And we're not talking just about those who were in prison. And as late as 1988, our former NDH minister, Artukovic, was extradited and given a very long, perhaps it was a life sentence, I can't remember, for crimes committed during the Second World War. I'm not going to defend Artukovic, that's not the point. But the point is that this was about things that had been done decades before, and not one, I don't know whether you can believe this, not one successful prosecution has ever taken place in this country against anybody who committed any murders or atrocities under communism. Not one. Nor will it be. Nor will it be. Because they do not want to know the truth. The truth may, as our Lord says, set you free, but it can also put you in prison. And that is, unfortunately, one of the pillars of the modern Croatian state is a denial of the communist past and the atrocities committed under it. And I can say that to somebody from outside. I don't care what anybody thinks. And the fact is, I should also add, that when the German court, this is for our friends here, when the German court in Munich found two former very senior Croat secret policemen guilty of the murder of a gentleman called Jurekovic, they were finally extradited after a law had to be quashed that the Sabo had passed, stopping their extradition. They were finally extradited, they were finally sentenced, and now there is massive pressure that these people should be freed by the president of Croatia. And so not only is it true that nobody who committed crimes under communism has been prosecuted here, the general view is that nobody who's committed crimes against Croats overseas should even serve any prison sentence at all. Now, I would say this is fundamentally unjust, and until you, not for me, until you and others are prepared to face up to this and do something about it, there will be problems in the Croatian state.